Thank you, Irina. Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are enjoying the beautiful weather. We could have get better weather in San Francisco, believe me. It's a foggy city. Before we dive into our presentation, how many of you have thought about a board position as your future role? Thank you for raising the hand. I hope by end of this talk, you can probably think a little bit more, and we have more such hands raised in future. So we'll talk about a couple of things today. I want to start with a little bit intro about what the roles and responsibility of a board looks like. There are various different type of board roles. People talk about board of directors, board members, board advisors. What is some high-level difference between some of these roles? And I'll share a little bit of my personal journey, how I got my first role as well, and a little bit secret sauce, the main point of this whole conversation. And what happens once you do land a board role after that, and some key takeaways. So with that, if you have any burning questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Hey, can we dive a little bit deeper into it? And I can modulate that. So roles and responsibility of the board. Board sits above CEO. They are providing high-level insights and oversight for overall company's future. They participate in doing strategic planning. They monitor day-to-day activities. They are also the leaders who actually select and do performance reviews of CEO, as well as other C executive levels. Main of their responsibilities are governance and compliance. All the government regulations, SEC rules, everything goes into the board. The stakeholder management is a big part of their job. Investors who are investing in the company, the customers, of course, the big clients, shareholders, as well as employees. They oversight on all of them. There are various committees in a board, and each committee is focused on one or the other focus areas. There is also ethical and social responsibility in the board. We have known that term from a CSR in the historic times. Now we call it ESG, environmental, social, and governance model. And that is getting a little bit hot topic these days in the board. The other hot topic in the board these days is cybersecurity and AI. Naturally, that is the boom right now. The typical size of a board is around 8 to 12 people. Very small boards also exist, 5, and some large exist like 15. But the ideal size is that 2 is a team thing. Can you make it really effective and make the decisions faster? So what are the different board roles? And how you should think about some of these roles which can apply for you. The main 2 roles which are in very well-known terms is board of director and board of advisor. Now, the major differences between these 2 depends. Sometimes there is a fine line between the 2 for each organization, but the major difference is about their responsibilities. The board of directors are responsible to make sure companies run smoothly. They have everything tied up, not buttoned up. They have fiduciary duties. They are legally responsible to act solely in the interest of the company. While if you think about board of advisors, they are the specialists. They bring a specific skill set or can guide the management layer to be able to achieve a certain goal. It is up to the management layer and the board if they want to take their advice or not. That's why they are called board of advisors. And many of those people on the board of advisors sometimes do turn into board of directors as well. If the management thinks the advice is so valuable and they want to engage them more and more, and that's when they can convert from each role to another role. Now, board of directors have voting rights. What do they vote on? They vote on the financials of the company, the strategy of the company, making any kind of big changes in overall company's working conditions. Board advisors don't have that voting power. They can advise on many, many things, but they don't hold, in the end, the accountability of it. I want to share a little bit of my personal story. How did I land up my first board role? I have always been passionate about serving the community. My father raised us in that way. He always contributed in the community in the children's health perspective. And when I immigrated to the United States, I definitely focused on building my career first. But that always resonated with me in the back that I'm missing something. I'm not doing what should be done for the society. So I volunteered in many, many places, and I explored many opportunities to be able to do that. And one time I got into the thing that, oh, do you want to be the board? I'm like, okay, I don't understand what that means, but okay, tell me more about it. Just the previous 2 slides, I had no idea what that means. And that's where I explored a lot more, what does the board looks like. I made my fair share of mistakes there. I joined a couple of organizations which were not the right fit, and I also joined a couple of organizations which required way too much time from my thing that I could not contribute. But overall, then I found We Care Children. It's an organization which exists for more than 6 decades now, and I've been on their board for 4+ years. I think I'm still learning from my fellow peers in that board, but also be able to contribute. So I'm very proud to be part of that. They serve the socially and mentally challenged kids, developmentally challenged kids, and do early intervention programs. I'm a member of their executive committee and program committee, and guide the chair and the executive directors on the company. Over the time, I wanted to go into more corporate boards, and we'll talk about what's the difference between nonprofit and corporate boards as well. And my first board advisor role has been with Drive Metrics, which is an AI-driven customer service and relationship platform. But keeping the focus of this conversation for you guys to be able to leverage, what is the difference between nonprofit and corporate board? Nonprofits do have legal liabilities, but not that many. We have a little bit easier rules and processes to follow, while on the corporate boards, you have a higher legal responsibility. Mostly, you would see many small nonprofit boards are not paid positions. But on the corporate side, it's usually a paid position. Now, some of them are exception. The very big organizations are still paying their nonprofit board members. When you choose your organization, where do you want to serve on the board? The most important thing, in my opinion, is aligning your personal values and mission with the organization's mission. It's more important to do that in the nonprofit sector, because you will be giving a lot of your bandwidth and time, and you want to make sure that it does align there. Now, that also is important for the corporate directors, but I think on the corporate directors board, there's a lot more at stake. Your connections, your personal network, your reputation is on the line if the company doesn't work. So there is a lot more buy-in when you need to think when you join a board. So it's an interview both ways. You interview the organization interview you. A little more than a full-time job thing, which we do. So what's the secret sauce? How you can go there? I will be emphasizing a lot on building the right connections. Connections matters the most in this industry. It's a very hidden industry. You don't see board roles lying around on the job portals. Why? Because everyone is recruited through connections. You have your network, and they recommend you for a particular positions. So think about who are your mentors, who are your sponsors, who would be putting their reputation online to sponsor you for a particular position, and double down on building the network. There are various routes how you get into the corporate boards. You are C-level executive of a public company, you have VC funding route, you're funding a company, yes, you can get a seat on the board. You have a PE route, but the connections is the most important thing. Now, once you actually do make your mind that, yes, I want to be on a board and I want to join a particular type of company, that's when you start building your profile that way. Your board resume looks very different than your corporate resumes. You want to really focus on what do you bring on the table, why you should be in the room to make the call for that organization. And then the last is hunt. You really wait and hunt for the right position. It's more important to find the right role than to actually have a role, because you will be committing not for a year or two. It's usually 3-4 years you commit for an organization. Registering with some board search firms does help. I definitely recommend advisory board for advisory kind of roles. Exec Thread is a free forum as well. NACD I highly recommend for National Association Corporate Board of Directors, which is definitely 23,000 plus board of directors are there, including public companies. So you choose which community you want to be part of and really build your connections through that. Interviewing organizations and making sure that you have your selection criteria figured out is a really big part of it. Once you have all of this, let's say you do land a job, what does life looks like after that? You do continue your board memberships for a long time. The time commitment is real. I spend today almost 12 to 15 hours minimum every month on these two board positions. And that is always, the challenge. When you have a full-time role, you do want to make sure that you give the right amounts of time to be able to understand the business, to be able to guide the management, and be able to get value out of that experience for yourself as well. Leveraging your connections, it goes beyond just knowing people. You will be recommending your network to bring the business for the company or making them invest in those companies. So people are more interested on your connections too. Not only on your skill set, but what other people you can connect the business with. And that becomes part of your daily job. Becoming ambassador, so it's not only like saying that you are a board advisor or board of director of an organization, because you would be at that point lobbying for that organization much beyond that. You are the ambassador for that organization. It's your responsibility to make it successful. There is no role above that, apart from shareholders, of course. So what are the 3 learnings I would like you all to take today is be intentional. Board roles don't come your way just like any other job. You have to pursue this path actively. It is a multi-year journey. So be intentional if you want to go there, and what do you want out of those roles? And what organization you want to be part of? Build your connections very wisely. Investing in the meaningful relationship is the biggest time commitment and energy commitment you can make. It's not only valuable for the board roles. You all know the value of connections in your professional careers as well. But choosing those connections and investing relationships, time in there is much more important in this industry. It takes years to build a very much connection which can put their reputation online for you. And then believe. Daring to dream that you can do it, that you can actually also reach to the top of the public board sectors. And then believing in yourself is the part of the biggest key. Once you do that, the path does become clear. I do want to leave enough time for the questions today, so thank you for listening.
I have no questions on Slido. Please scan the QR code and add your questions. In the meantime, I have some questions for you.
Sure.
Just to get to know you a little better, can you tell us what is something you enjoy doing so much that you forget where time goes?
Personally?
Yes. Or professionally, can be either.
I do love gardening. A little bit story that I had a black thumb before, so I was like, it's a good challenge. I should actually make some plants. So I started with that, and then I got a little better, and I started propagating succulents. Now I think I have a decently green thumb. I can propagate palm trees and anything on that sort. So that's the one area I have to put a timer if I'm not putting hours and hours in the garden.
Great. And then my second question is, do you have any tips for dividing time when you have multiple roles that you have to, and responsibilities that you have to deal with on a monthly basis?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we all have busy lives. We have our families as well, professional career, and doing something on a top of that does requires a lot of time commitment. So being very intentional about what time you can really devote to what kind of role in your life, whether it is your family, your work, or any kind of board position, and then being able to really be upfront about that. If I'm participating in a nonprofit, I know how much time commitment they need. We can have a conversation around it and maybe build that support structure around it. The building your support structure is the most important thing. Choose your right partners. You cannot do everything on your own. You need people.
All right, I see questions coming in. Thank you so much. And we'll start with the first one. How early would you have to start a search for the right company?
That's a very interesting question because many people wait until they have reached a certain level in their professional career to actually start thinking about the board roles. I believe it takes years. It's like a credit history. It takes years to build your credit worthiness. It takes years also to build your credit worthiness for the board positions. So starting early is not a bad idea. It does require time, but you can always think about what type of organizations you want to go in. It takes years and years, more than decades sometimes, to build your path towards public boards, if that's what you want to chase for.
Thank you. Next question. How much do corporate board positions pay?
It's an interesting question. It's like every single salary we talk about. A software engineer can get paid from one range to a very high range. It really depends on the company as well as the position, your expertise, and many other things. But on an average, I can say that if you talk about a private sector, I'm just going to make up some numbers, so don't hold me accountable for it. But if we are talking about a company of 250 people and they have the board positions, it would be really more about your base pay, which would be around 150 to 220K, and it would be really about your stocks, your benefits. It's just like any other management position, but board positions are paid less than management positions because management positions are full-time jobs, board positions are not.
Thank you. I see this question twice, so I'm just going to combine it. Can you share a not so great experience as a board member or difficult problems that you had to solve?
The difficult problems, some of them you face as your professional career too, but when you have to replace a CEO, that's not fun. It is the person who connects with the company the most, but if you do not have the right leader for that organization, if you have to change it. Finding the right leader and making that change is one of the most painful work. But there are other things like compliance sometimes. It's very strong and sometimes very tedious work.
But you wouldn't trade it for anything, right?
You gotta do what you gotta do for the right thing to do for the business. So yes, doing these changes and making that happen is hard, but there's a decent amount of strategy which goes in the risk management portion of these things. Once you have that, you have a communication plan around it, you have press release plans around it. You have to report to some of your highest customers, stakeholders, investors, everything. But if you have confidence on all of that, you can make these things happen for sure.
Let's see. How do you handle conflicts of interest between your day-to-day job and board job?
The conflict of interest, so it's between the day-to-day job and the board jobs?
Yeah.
Okay. It's really, I think the majority of it is whatever board you are serving on, make sure it is not in direct line of what you do for full-time job. The conflict of interest should not be in terms of the organization's conflict. For example, you should not work for a competitor directly because then you cannot resolve that conflict. But if you do not have those problems, then it's really about your time and commitment. And that is something you need to be honest to yourself as well as with the companies you are part of, that this is the time commitment I will be making, whether it takes during the business hours or in your personal time or in the longer durations in the business. So.
Makes sense. One of the most upvoted questions. Is it possible to get a board position without being in an executive position first?
Yes, and that is why I'm giving this talk. That anybody, all of you can do the board positions as well. You do not have to be a C-level executive in a public company. What it matters the most is what do you bring on the table? What are your connections? If you really want to make it happen, it takes passion, perseverance, and charm. This is Michael Kobori, Chief Sustainability Officer of Starbucks, says charms is very important because you need to influence people so that they can follow you and support you in your journey.
And as a follow-up to that, if you don't have the executive position, can a board role help you get an executive position?
Oh, definitely. So for example, if you advise on a board, let's say it's a startup, and your insights and the advice is very valuable, it is that CEO who is probably still in the private sector would see the value, and they want for you to be able to lead sometimes in the management roles as well. So the interchangeability of board advisor and management role is not uncommon. That definitely happens. It really depends on your relationships with the board as well as your relationship with the management layer at that time.
Awesome. I mean, I'm hoping everybody leaves here inspired and with a better understanding of board roles and how you're demystifying essentially the role. So thank you for answering all these questions. My next question is, how did you land your first corporate board role?
So the corporate board roles are a little different than nonprofits. Nonprofits, you definitely have a lot more like mission-driven, community-driven goals around that. Corporate boards are a little bit more around, for many of us, it might be skill sets, that we have a specific skill set which other companies can leverage. For example, I advise companies on how they can leverage AI technologies in a safer way and still be able to make their business grow. That's my background. I've been there doing that for like a decade now. So I can do that a lot more. That's something, my power, but something like similar, you will have your powers too. So recognize what you are really good at and what you really like to do. If you combine the two, you will find your niche. And that is something you can bring to the table.
Amazing. I see a lot of questions around, so you mentioned a lot the need for connections and building those right connections. What is the profile of this right connection and how do you find them? And if you can share, how did that look for you, the right connection to get you into this world?
Yeah, so there is no right or wrong, I would say. It's really about starting early. Why people say that going to a right school or college makes a lot strong connection than which goes for your lifetime. It's about your time commitment. You would see, there are two strategies in this. One strategy is choosing the right people who actually matters with your values, not only like you want to get something out of them, but it's also about building that relationship with them on human level. If somebody really is connected to you with that level, then they will definitely become your long-term friends. And years over years, it will become just stronger. The other part of the strategy is really think about a spider network. You want to maximize your time and still be able to build the strong connections. So think about mega nodes, a person who has a very strong connections around them. If you become really close friends with that person, you already tap into their network. But let's say if you only work in that network and you talk to 6, 7 people, it is not that much value. I know it sounds very strategic thing, but if you are very intentional about it, then you focus only on the mega nodes. There are people who are really good at it. Not everybody has to be good at it. I'm an introvert, by the way. It takes a lot of push for me to go out and meet people, and a lot of like out of comfort zone feeling. But if you focus on the mega nodes, then you can really focus on building 5 most beautiful connections you want to make, and they will have their networks. And you will automatically tap into at least 40, 50 people that way. And being strategic about your time and being strategic about who you want to be connected with would lead a value.
Thanks. And I wanna add something to that. With building connections, as you said, you have to start by asking what can you offer to them, right? And as you mentioned, instead of like what can you get from them. And I imagine that was a key part for you as well.
Definitely, like mentorship is a way to go there, but do think mentors choose you as well. So be very respectful to your mentors. It's important. They are giving their valuable time and energy to you. And if you don't plan to follow any of their advice, do get back to them and tell them why you didn't do it, what they suggested to. Respecting them and being able to be very truthful and humble about it is the right way to do it. There is just no trick about these things. It's just about being very human and be real.
I love that, being human. How did you land your first corporate board role?
So I was looking for something like where I can contribute in any kind of company for their adoption of AI technologies. It's a buzzword right now. I know 10 years ago, it was just a lab thing. People used to put in R&D units. So it was just about time that I can really leverage that. And there are many companies right now who are actually trying to evolve their businesses through AI and cybersecurity lens. So I put it out there as a request that I'm willing to do it. And one of my board connection actually introduced me to a company, and I landed up that. Also, like advisory board, the forum, you can actually go there. It's a paid forum, but you can really put your profile there, interview the companies, and for startups, you can get that role very easily. It's a good exposure. You might not be paid. You will probably be giving some time, but you will start understanding how board advisors for startups would work.
And how long did it take you from when you decided this is something you want to consider until you actually got the first role?
I did not have a timeline in my mind, but I would say like 4-6 months, just because I was already out there in the market when I thought that I guess I have a little bit more time to be able to give that much, but it can easily take a year and a half too. So starting early is the key.
Start early, guys. Next question. How do I talk to my current employer about taking on a board role outside of the job?
It is a really good question. So your current company should know that you are contributing the board roles. I filled out a special form in my current company that this is the board role I will be doing, and I want legal to verify there is no conflict of interest, and we will be advising on this. Being very open about it, I think not many people would mind it. All they care about is can you do your job right or not. But if you are willing to commit more time and your mind to something else, it's all fine and good. Pretty much all companies I know do entertain board roles. Especially think about all senior executives in your current companies. I'm sure they are serving on some or the other board as well. So just being open about it and make sure that you have your paperwork in the right order.
Thank you. What is a pitfall to watch out for with your first board role?
Pitfall to watch out for, don't go for the title. This is just a very attractive thing. Oh, I want to write board of director of something. That's just, not gonna cut it. What you are doing it for is for yourself and for that company. So do align your mission. Do think about what do you want to get out of that role and what you can bring to that role. It's a give and take relationship. You give your time, but you want something out of that too. I chose my peers on the board, like who I will be working on day in, day out, because my give was that what I can bring to the table, but my take was I want to learn more. And currently in my board, there are CFOs, there are chief of fire staff, there is chief of a banking person, a legal person. There's like a very wide variety of leaders in this industry who I can learn from. And then when I become part of these things, that's how I met Michael Kobari, who was Chief Sustainability Officer of Starbucks recently. So it's really about, what do you want to get out of and what you can bring to the table. But don't go for the title. You can get the title tomorrow. There are a lot of nonprofits, and there are a lot of private companies too, who just want somebody to be able to help them. But your time is the most valuable thing you have in life. So treat it that way.
We have time for one short question. How does the board get replaced? What is the accountability
How they are
mechanism?
accountable?
Yeah. How do you know a board member does a good job?
Well, the government does a decent job in putting SEC regulations around it. If a company is not doing fine, they first catch the board, and then they go for management layer. So if anything falls in terms of risk, in terms of regulations, they will definitely go after the board. That's why you see a lot of news happening in the environmental side today, that people are holding companies accountable for their environmental carbon footprint. And that's a responsibility of the board to make it sure that they account for that and publish reports publicly.
So with great power comes great responsibility as well.
Definitely.
All right, well, we're out of time. Thank you so much for teaching us so much and for answering all the questions. And I'll see you guys in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I will be also hosting a roundtable at 2 p.m. if you want to connect and be able to talk more about these things. Thank you.